Hello everyone, this is Erosag. Today I'm just testing out this new microphone that I got, and testing out this setup with my camera, my microphone, and just sitting here and talking. Um, Today I just want to go over the forms of lightsaber combat as ideologies rather than move sets. Um, I feel that it is a almost like a misnomer, like a common misnomer, that the forms are certain types of strikes, certain types of blocks, or like as you'll typically see, all defense, all attack, as you would see with Sarisu and Ataru. So we're just going to go over these quickly. I had written a little article about this. Unfortunately, it was lost to the internet gods. So yay, here we are, and we're just going to discuss it quickly in my rambly format, because apparently some people like that. So, Form 1, Shicho. A lot of people consider this the beginner form, but that is mostly because it can be. It's not typically practical for like dueling. It was in the fiction. It was designed for a time where dueling really wasn't a thing. They were more defending people and blocking blaster fire. Dueling only came later on when the Sith and dark side ideologies began to clash to the point of violence. So, and that's when you brought in Makashi. So Shicho isn't so much like a beginner form in the fact that it's where you start if you want to learn how to use a lightsaber. It's more an ideology of defending others over yourself. So, like, I believe that if someone was practicing Shicho to defend others, and they had two blaster bolts coming in at them, they would block the one that was going at the person they're defending, rather than the one going at themselves, even if it means taking on themselves. Now, it echoes quite a lot throughout Jedi ideology of defending others over yourself. It is in giving that we receive, it is in protecting others that we are saved, blah, 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 all that. So it becomes more of an ideology of defense of others before yourself. And that's why I think it's the beginner form, because it cements that idea to practitioners and Jedi of being selfless. Just my thoughts on the matter. Then we move on to Makashi. Makashi, of course, everyone says, "Oh, it's like a fencing form," and it typically is. The best way to encompass the ideology of it is to take on like a proper fencing style. However, there's no particular moves to it. A lot of people, it's like, oh, it's a lot of thrusting. It's like keeping people at a distance. But I think it's the distance thing about it. Dueling, especially because if you consider that this dueling form arose when there was a need for it, when people started, like in the fiction at least, needing to duel other people with lightsabers, and like, well, how do we do this? We don't know how to do this without using a sword, so we need to figure out how to use this new instrument, the lightsaber, which is an omnidirectional cutting tool. It doesn't have an edge, so you don't have to worry about edge alignment. You just have to hit them somehow. But you also have to worry about being hit yourself, because no matter how you get hit, no matter how gently, no matter how what angle it comes in at, it is going to do damage. Therefore, the idea of keeping people controlled is a control form, knowing how to keep people at a distance where you are able to effectively attack them, but also at the same time ensuring that they're not able to get within an effective range of you. There's a duel in the Clone Wars which I think best exemplifies this. It's the Dooku versus Asajj Ventress and the Night Sisters. So there's two Night Sisters and Ventress, so it's three people against Dooku, and he's blinded. He's been drugged, blinded, so he can only use the Force to see at this point. He fights the entire time in his pajamas with his eyes closed. It's amazing. However, he has the advantage of knowing his general surroundings just because he lives there, but also you see immediately, as fast as he physically can, he gets into a hallway. I don't think this is a mistake. I see this as he knows that if he can't see them, he can control which direction they're going to be able to come from, behind and in front. It's essentially just a control method. Once he is able to control the situation, he goes out into the open. Once he knows that he has gained enough of his power and is able to like just zap them all, he goes out into the open and makes them lower their guard. So it's not so much like, oh, you have to use one hand, you have to adopt a proper fencing stance. You can, and I think the proper fencing stance lends itself well to keeping with the ideals of keeping everything under control. However, I don't think it is necessary to adopt the ideals of Makashi of keeping things where you want them to be. You'll see a lot of times Dooku will there was one time where he's on a ship and he cuts the ship and jumps off because he knew there was another ship, but he got his opponent to get on the ship that's going down, and now there's no way for them to get off. He's defeated them without having to fight them properly because he knows that they're going down and he has a way out of there. He's controlling the situation, which is very important if you don't want to die. Hey, that's amazing. Most people like not dying. One of them. Then we go on to Surisu. Now, Surisu is the first one where people call it the all-defensive form. And that's okay. Like, yeah, it is one that favors defense over anything, but we can see that practitioners will, of course, go on the offensive. The ideology is wearing your opponent down before striking, knowing your opponent's attack patterns. Essentially, if you want like a non-Star Wars example, would be the fight between Captain America and Tony Stark in Civil War. I'm not going to say spoiler warning for this. Seriously, the movie's been out for like 5 years at this point. If you haven't watched it, boo-hoo. So the Captain America, obviously a better fist fighter. Tony Stark is a bit more of a distance fighter. So when Captain America is just railing on him, he has no chance. So he just goes into like this solid defensive form, just holds himself down and analyzes his fight patterns and then is able to counter them. So it's just turtle bear down, hold yourself, keep all the defensive, make sure you're not dead, and then you're able to strike. It's essentially learning to stay alive long enough to be able to counter your opponent in the most effective manner possible. Now, we can see this in practice as an ideology when you see people who will engage in discussions with people that they don't agree with necessarily, but they will engage in discussion for the purpose of understanding what they're going up against. How well versed is this person? How much do they understand of the situation? Is this really worth their time? And once they've gathered, like, it's essentially resource gathering, and then once they have enough resources, they're able to mobilize and most effectively carry out their counterattack. So that's how you would see it in person. So it's not just all blocks and then just waiting for the right moment. It's effective use of that time, because eventually you will get worn down, especially if somebody is hitting really hard or hitting a lot, or has already figured out your weaknesses and is just beginning to pick at them, and you're like already beginning to get mentally frazzled. It's being able to bunker down, steady yourself, and figure out, how can I best tackle this situation? Then we move on to Ataru, which was the answer to Surisu, where Surisu was all defense. Everyone calls this one all attack. However, it's not. It's just very mobile. And I think the mobility aspect is what we're going to focus on. Essentially, an Ataru user would not be set in how they're going to go about things. They're going to attack something from many different angles. So it's not going to be like, oh, I'm just going to do a flurry of attacks. A flurry of attacks may not work. And if that doesn't work, what then? You've wasted a ton of energy on nothing. Flashiness. And I'm not going to say anything against flashiness. Everyone knows my style, and it is way too flashy. So essentially, it is effective use of multiple angles, but also being quick about it. Sometimes you just don't have time to waste trying to judge an opponent. Sometimes you just have to be like, boom, 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 boom. These are all your weaknesses, and we're going to go at it. So, in practice, outside of using a lightsaber and you're using a martial art, essentially, Ataru would be being able to look at what the person they're going up against is saying or doing, and being able to go point A, point B, point C, point D, and just put it all out, and bam. And like they're not gonna wait to figure out what their opponent is made of. They just go for it. Sometimes that's not an effective strategy. Sometimes you'll find you've just wasted a ton of energy for no reason. God knows I've commented, tried to engage in a discussion with people, and it goes nowhere because they don't respond. And it's like, oh, yay, cool. I did research and voiced made sure it was a respectful discussion. Try to engage, and nothing. That's how Ataru could be used in a real life situation outside of a combat one. So that's Ataru essentially from my point of view. So it's not all attack, it's quick and effective use of going forward into a situation. Then we go on to Djemso, which everyone says is the power form. And it's okay, yeah, it can be. Sort of like Makashi and Sarisu and Ataru. Sometimes using power is the most effective route. However, Djemso straight up translates into perfect weapon. It is really just being able to effectively know what you are capable of, where your weak points are, so you know how to best defend against them, but also being able to analyze your opponent quickly and be able to find their weak points and make them pay for it. It's Krav Maga, Jiu-Jitsu, essentially, of debate, interaction. Essentially, if I was to, because I'm more of a Jujutsu practitioner, I don't have a lot of time. I'm a busy person. Sometimes I don't have a lot of time to write out long responses or get into it with people. So sometimes I just need to find the holes and just be like, here's the hole, here's the hole, here's the hole, and then wait for them to respond. If they respond, awesome. That's then we can engage in a proper discussion. But sometimes it's also knowing when your post, examples, when I post things, sometimes people will be like, well, here's the flaw in it. And I acknowledge that I have flaws, and practicing Jedi, not perfect Jedi. And essentially, by knowing those flaws, you're able to best prepare for people attacking or getting at and narrowing in on those weaknesses. So you just got to know what to expect, and how to be able to look at something and figure out how is this not good enough yet. I don't know if that makes sense, but that's it's not a power form, but sometimes the idea of power and landing very powerful, very strong blows lends itself well to the philosophy thereof. It is being able to effectively just be like, okay, I'm just gonna boom through this and be like, we got this, rather than attacking from different angles. You just all in on one. But it's really trying to figure out what's the most effective method about going around this while wasting the least amount of energy. Then we go on to Niman, which is the balance form. I'm not a big fan of Niman's philosophy because it's sort of take everything from the other ones and put it into one. Why doesn't everyone go for this then? It's having a specialization in anything else just seems like it would create weaknesses. Some people say it's because they're throwing force abilities in it. It's okay, all Jedi would do that, wouldn't they? All Jedi would use force abilities when they're dueling, right? I would hope so. However, we don't have force powers just yet. Maybe one day, maybe never. So how does this where they say it's a balanced form of all the previous forms, and or mixing in force powers, how do those mesh into a Jedi realist path? Knowing how to adapt, I guess. As I said, this isn't really one that I feel has a very strong philosophy, because when you just say, "Oh, it's the best of all worlds," but doesn't have any of the strong points of the other ones, you sort of lose a lot of things. Then we go on to Form 7, which people know has the two variants. You have Dejemso, no, not Dejemso. Someone's going to murder me over that. Juyo and Vapad. Okay, so I'm going to get a little controversial here. This is the hot take with Ari. These aren't forms. They do not exist as forms. They are a mindset of emotion. That is it. Now, Juyo, everyone knows, is like a anger-based, hate-based, pain-based, whatever it takes. Any negative emotion they use to fuel their attack and make it stronger, faster, more acrobatic, and just tear their opponent apart. And that's it. Yeah, essentially, it is. You can have Juyo Makashi, where somebody is controlling the situation just because they hate the person so much. That's my hot take on Juyo. Now Vapad, I think, gets a really strange rap. As Mace Windu developed it to channel his dark side, and Vapad can control you, because like his the person he developed it with, because there was two practitioners that developed it, fell to the dark side, but he wasn't practicing Vapad anymore. He was now practicing Juyo. He wasn't channeling his dark side. He was controlled by it. So thus, Juyo. Now again, here we go. Hot take with Ari. Juyo is not. Vapad is not dark side based. It isn't. Like, essentially, when Mace looked himself, like, and this is going some deep lore stuff, so I can understand why some people don't grasp this, but I'm going to explain it very quickly. Mace Windu had visions of the future. Now, some of these visions were based off of his purple lightsaber. He had a blue lightsaber, from what I understand, and he kept seeing these visions of him fighting this great battle, which ended up being the Battle of Geonosis, with a purple lightsaber, and it was mentally messing with him. So essentially, the Jedi Council sent him on a quest to go out, and hopefully the Force would guide him to this purple blade of his, and it did. But he also had this struggle with combat. He loved combat. He was worried. He's like, I shouldn't love combat this much. Jedi shouldn't like to fight. Jedi shouldn't enjoy pulling out their lightsaber and just dominating their opponent. So he's not channeling darkness. He's not channeling some sort of like deep rage or whatever. He's channeling joy. He loves what he does. When he knows he's one of the best duelist of his time, even though when you actually look at it, everyone's like, ooh, Yoda is the best duelist of his time, Mace Windu is the best duelist of his time, Obi-Wan is the best duelist of his time, Luke Scott, everyone's the best duelist of their time. Who's, like, do they all exist in their own time? Like, whatever. But yeah, he's not channeling a dark thing. He's channeling his darkness, and he saw his love of combat as a dark thing because he's worried that it would take him over. But he's not channeling darkness. He's channeling joy. He takes his deep love of the training, of his skill with a lightsaber, to absolutely power through everything, to make him go faster. He loves it. He loves what he does. I love doing stuff with lightsabers. I guess that sort of makes me a Vapad practitioner, but I don't call it a form. I just consider it more of a mindset. Yeah, it's not a dark side thing. It's just he was worried, and he said, I need to channel this darkness in a healthy way. And the healthy way was just learning to accept it and love it, and use that love of combat to fuel his abilities. Now, how do these forms apply to Jedi Realism? Juyo obviously does not. A Jedi should not act in hate, should not act in anger, should not act in pain. We do sometimes. We are human beings. Sometimes we can be in terrible pain and lash out as a result. Sometimes we can be angry. Sometimes we could just not like somebody. People have known me for a while and know that I used to get really angry at this, like some people, and just lash out just because they were commenting. Thankfully, they're not part of my path anymore. It's like eventually it was just enough was enough. It was unhealthy, and I'm better for it. So, Juyo has no place in a Jedi's path. But Vapad, learning to channel joy into what you do, I think is essential for longevity of doing this path. If you don't love what you're doing, it just becomes tedious. It becomes a chore, and sometimes that's what's needed. I know when I first came to this path, it was because I needed a change of pace. I needed something to help me become better, help me to become stronger, help me to just sort myself out. So it was tedious at the beginning. I found the training. I immediately tackled the training on the Tojo page, because it was something to do. It kept my mind active. It started honing me back into what I was, because I was beginning to like just fall apart. Tackled the apprenticeships, it just move along the path. But it was tedious. Only, I guess, about a year ago, like after I became a knight and after all the drama that happened thereafter, I began to really love this path. Like really, really be like, okay, yeah, like just don't take it as seriously, man. Just chill out, hold on, and just be like, okay, cool. And then you can start enjoying it. So yeah, like if you, example, some people want to write books for the Jedi path. Some people want to train. Learn to love it. Like if you're not loving it, and you're not channeling that love of what you're doing into it, it's gonna show. It's gonna make the work more lackluster, and as a result, it's not gonna be as brilliant, not as powerful. So, and that's how Vapad plays into the Jedi Realist path. So, thank you all for listening. This mostly has just been a test of this thing. What's it called? It's the Toner Q9 Studio microphone. It's quite nice. It comes with like this whole mount system that's like behind my computer. It's beautiful. The audio is quite nice, so just wanted to do a video really to test it and just ramble. People apparently like listening to me ramble. Yay, cool. If people like listening to me, I will. I can talk. That's something I'm capable of. So, yeah. Thank you for listening. If you have any questions, I'm welcome. I'm always open to discuss it. That's really it. Thank you for listening, and may the Force be with you.